Hello and welcome back to the Untitled Mike Ashmore podcast. My name is still Mike Ashmore. Imagine that. Crazy. Guys, we've got episode 11 coming up for you. It's going to be a real fun chat with a guy who was a real big part of those Somerset teams in both 2015 and 2016. Randy Boone joins us. And I don't really think I appreciated what a great career that he actually had until I started doing the research for this. Two-time minor league all-star, a national champion in college, a really accomplished guy, and it's going to be really fun to get into this one. So without further ado, here it is, our chat on the Untitled Mike Ashmore podcast with Randy Boone. All right, guys, welcome back to the Untitled Mike Ashmore podcast. I am honored to have our next guest on, looking back at his career. It was a hell of a career, and we will certainly get into that. A national champion in college, a minor league all-star. Randy Boone is on the podcast. Randy, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here with you.
Yeah, it's nice catching up with you. I haven't been able to get a chance to chat with you in a couple years now. At least this is on the phone, not in person. It's been a while, but I guess how's everything going? And I guess what's kind of keeping you busy these days?
Everything's going well, man. Of course, last time we saw each other, I just had our daughter, who is now going to turn 4 in a couple days.
Wow.
And we have since added we have a 1-year-old son. I think 16 months old, and other than that, I'm a project manager at a construction company, and those three things keep me pretty busy.
I remember you had kind of been doing construction, I think, before you came back in 16, is that right?
Yeah, construction's always kind of been my off-season deal. Even before that, in the off-seasons when I was with Toronto, I would go back and work for a buddy of mine residentially. So it's always kind of been something that I've been involved with. I've enjoyed building stuff from, with my family and stuff kind of growing up. So it's always been an interest, and kind of weird scenario fell into an opportunity here back home once everything ended on the baseball side. And it's been good. It's been a good deal so far. Stay at home and around the family a lot more and get to see everybody a lot more. So I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, was that always kind of the plan once the playing days were over to kind of go into construction, or did you ever think about kind of staying in the game and like a coaching role? Because I think you'd have a lot to offer there, but I know that the construction thing is kind of an easy transition as well. So,
construction was always kind of on the possible agenda. I honestly never thought I would leave the game. Obviously you get older, things change, and with the family and the kids and just being around family, being back home, something I hadn't done in a pretty long time, especially the last couple of years of my career with the winter ball and stuff like that. So, like I said, it's just kind of a unique opportunity to be around a little bit more and see my kids grow up and just be around family and kind of have roots in one spot. So we talk about it a lot. I don't know that I will never get back into baseball, or I still kind of do lessons here and there on the side. I know I don't want to throw it out there like, I can just hop back in whenever I want, because I know it's a tough industry to establish a career and stuff like that. But, I stay involved and around the game as much as I want to be, I guess, at this point. But honestly, it was good to kind of take a little bit of a break when you kind of don't end up where you wanted to, I guess, with your baseball career. Sometimes it's good to get a little bit of a break and kind of reset the batteries.
All right, well, there's plenty of fun, good memories baseball-wise to talk about. And I guess for me to kind of start out with, I guess would kind of be the college days with Texas. And first off, starting with winning that national championship. Just what were the memories from that? And a team that was that loaded to be a part of that, both pitching staff and lineup. What was that like?
Yeah, it was an awesome experience. That's really, that was the reason why I wanted to go to Texas to begin with, was to have an opportunity to compete for a national championship. As far as the team goes, it's crazy, and I tell people this all the time. The 04 team the year before, I'm not going to say would have easily handled the 05 team, but I honestly think it was definitely a deeper team, probably a little more talented overall, but we ran into two really good pitchers in the championship series, and that's baseball, and that's what happens. In 05, probably not quite as deep, but definitely every bit as talented or right there with it. And that team had a little different veteran leadership, a little bit more of a kind of a burning fire type guy, and Jay Brent Cox, really outspoken, outgoing, kind of fireball type guy. And I think the team kind of took on that mentality in the playoffs, and we sort of got hot and kept pushing, and it was sort of just one of those deals where we lost a game in the regional, had to come back, lost a game in the super regional, had to come back through. So kind of got put to the test, our backs to the wall. And I think with the veteran leadership, I mentioned Jay Brent, Seth Johnson, those guys kind of brought the best out in them when their backs were to the wall, and they kind of rubbed off on the rest of us.
Yeah, I covered JB actually in the Trenton Thunder. I was their beat writer from 08 to 13, and I had him kind of a little bit earlier on in the stint there. And I know he was kind of a fiery guy. I guess kind of looking back.
Yeah, you definitely got to see the fiery side then.
Yeah, he had some moments there, and we'll leave it at that. But I guess people kind of look back at those college rosters through the lens of pro ball, and I see a name like Adrian Alaniz, and like I watched him in AA. I know he was a stud. I know JB. I know Taylor Teagard. I know all these guys. Do you think people looking back really truly understand how stacked that college team was?
I don't think so, because it's easy to look at it through the lens, like you said, of what everybody did with their professional career. But it's a different game. College is a different game. There were some really, really, really good baseball players on that team overall, period. College, pro, whatever. And sometimes professionally, there's other factors at play, health. Sometimes you get blocked by guys. Just because you didn't get to the big leagues and have a 10-year career doesn't necessarily mean that you weren't, a dominant player. And that team, like I said, and the 04 team really, and even the teams my junior and senior year were very talented. We just kind of had some unfortunate circumstances with health and stuff like that my junior and senior year, to where we were a little shorthanded, and once again ran up against two teams that got really, really hot. And we were that team my sophomore year, and we saw them later. But the amount of talent that was there in 04 and 05, I think, was something that was pretty remarkable. Our scrimmages on Wednesday, Thursday sometimes were pretty epic in comparison to even our weekend series. So
yeah, I can't even imagine. I'm curious though, kind of looking at the stats from back then, transitioning to being a reliever in your junior and senior years. I guess what was the process that kind of led to that?
Well, my sophomore year, I was started pretty much the whole season. Was a Friday night starter for a little bit of it, then kind of flipped back to Saturday and Sunday as we kind of traded off there. And then Kyle McCullough, who ended up being a first rounder, really, really came into his own and established pretty much a stranglehold on that Friday night job. And he was lights out for pretty much that entire season after the early part where we were kind of flip-flopping. And our setup guy that year started the season something like 9-0 or something crazy in the first 3 months. It just fell to where he had a bunch of appearances and a bunch of opportunities to pick up wins. Then later on in the season, I wouldn't say he was throwing the ball poorly. He just kind of got baseballed. Just some bad luck went his way. And, people that are familiar with the college game knows that college managers like to have their control, and trust is kind of a finicky thing. So
yeah,
when we're going into the playoffs, we kind of had a discussion that our Tuesday guy, Ken Kasparek, who is another guy that you probably ran across in the Eastern League over the years, he was really kind of coming on late in the season. So we talked, and I had been sort of a reliever for part of my freshman year, and felt that it would be best if I moved into the bullpen for the playoffs my sophomore year, and kind of bridge the gap between the starter and Jay Brent, and Ken would slide into that third starter spot, which at the time I was like, oh, hell yeah. I get to pitch every day. Let's do this. Well, had a couple appearances in the regional and super regional, and get to the World Series, and I'm pumped up. I'm like, man, I'm going to throw the 6th, 7th inning here and, bridge the gap, and the starters all throw 7, and we go to Jay Brent.
Yeah.
So, I did throw, I think it was an inning in the 3rd in the clinching game, which honestly they probably could have just went straight to Jay Brent in that one. So I do appreciate them giving me the opportunity to get out there and enjoy it. But so I think that kind of rolled over into the junior year. A little bit of an elbow injury that year as well. And when I came back, I really didn't have enough time to build back up to be a starter. So I just kind of hung out in the bullpen and stayed there. And had a decent year. And then that summer I went to the Texas Collegiate League and ended up pitching for Skip Johnson, who ended up being my pitching coach there my senior year, who's one of the most well-regarded pitching coaches in the nation for a good reason. He's really, really awesome at what he does. And all plans coming in my senior year was for me to be the Friday night guy, and I did make the first start for the opening series on Friday. And then just kind of a weird deal. Our closer, Austin Wood, from the year before, who was really good that year as a freshman, had a couple rough outings. And once again, like I said, trust is a finicky thing when it comes to college coaching and stuff like that. So
sure.
They came to me and asked if I would be the closer, and I said sure. And Woody ended up having a really good year for us, just for whatever reason. Like I said, he got off to kind of a rough start, so I ended up having a pretty good year there as a closer, and kind of started that way when I got into pro ball, and then that lasted all of about 2 weeks, and I went back to starting.
Yes. I know there's some role changes in college, but the overall experience of playing for Augie, what was that like?
I really, really enjoyed it. You see all the fiery blow-ups and stuff like that made him, famous on YouTube and stuff like that. But the guy was very, very intellectual, and he really understood the game. But I think what he did more than anything was manage people. He knew what buttons to push and how to get the best out of his guys. He didn't treat everybody the same, because you don't get the results out of everybody the same way. And I think that was, if I ever do get into coaching, and the guys that did get into coaching, I think that's something that they definitely took from him is, there's a fine line, and sometimes you got to find it to get the best out of your people. And I think he did that very well, as evidenced by why he won so many games. But I got a lot of great stories, and I think the biggest thing about Augie was you knew he cared. He cared about you. He cared about your teammates, and he really, really he wanted to win. He was a competitor, and he wanted you to win. And if you didn't want to win, then he really didn't have much time for you.
Yeah, well, understandable. That's certainly not a bad attitude to take when pretty much winning is just about the only thing that matters in college ball. But your junior year, I'm curious about that too. I saw the Twins took a chance to draft you in your junior year. Was there ever a thought of going with them, or I guess how did that all kind of play out?
So the way that all kind of went down, there was an opportunity, I guess, that they could potentially take me in the 6th round. And there were some discussions kind of dating back to what would it take, how to, to get me to go and what like that. And
sure.
I guess the money aspect right there in the 6th, 7th round was kind of on the fence of what I had basically told them. And there's kind of a brief conversation about that, and they ended up going a different direction there. And then I really didn't expect to get drafted at all after that, when it kept sliding. And then they ended up taking me in, I believe it was a 38th or something like that. Yeah. So they kind of monitored me a little bit over the summer when I was in the Texas Collegiate League, like I said. And I had a really good summer that summer. I threw the ball well, and Skip helped me a lot, kind of working on some stuff. And about halfway through the summer, we had a conversation, and it just didn't seem like they were going to do much from a financial aspect of it. And I basically just kind of decided at that point that I was going to go back to school and take another run at trying to get back to Omaha.
Yes. So Blue Jays draft you a year later, 7th round. I guess, what is that experience like? What is that moment like when you find out? Because obviously when they draft you, that's where you're going. So what's that experience like?
Yeah, completely different experience, like you said. Then as a senior, you hear all kinds of, hear this, hear that, oh yeah, you're going to go here, you're going to go there. But as a senior, you never really know. And kind of what we were expecting was almost like they talk about it in NFL draft and stuff now is when college senior pitchers started to go, there was probably going to be a run on them. And we were just kind of hoping that run would happen earlier rather than later.
Sure.
But ended up, I think Kyle Nicholson from A&M kind of started the trend a couple picks before me, and then they kind of started falling. So it was definitely awesome. I knew nothing about the Toronto organization at the time, but it was a kind of a relief, I guess, to know that you were going to get a shot to go play. And thought I put myself in a good enough position to get drafted and have an opportunity, but you never really know until it actually happens. So it was definitely a kind of a relief, but at the same time, a very, very exciting experience because, it's what everybody, that's what I've wanted to do my whole life, was to get an opportunity to play in the big league. So that was definitely a stepping stone for that, and was really excited to get going.
Yeah. Did you expect to do as well as you did out of the gate in Pro Bowl?
I don't know if I really had any expectations, to be honest with you. I didn't really have a whole lot of experience other than talking to guys from Texas when they came back and worked out in the off season as to what that was. I really didn't. I don't come from a baseball family, so to speak. I didn't have any, cousins or anybody that really had any minor league experience to lean on growing up. So basically, all I had was what those guys had told me. And some of those people were Houston Street that spent 2 seconds in the minor leagues and were in the pro, and some guys, had grinded. So, I had kind of a myriad of experiences to listen to. So I really didn't, I guess I didn't really know what it was going to be like. I had been successful in my career so far, so I guess I would say I'd expected to have success. But you never really know until you get out there and you get your feet wet and you have a couple good outings, and then you're like, okay, I can do this. I have the stuff to compete here, and then, I can give this a go.
Yeah. It's just kind of a broad question, I guess, but at that time, did you feel like you were a prospect in that system? Did you feel like you were being taken seriously and considered as someone who had a chance to get up to the top level?
Yeah, definitely. But we had actually, myself and a couple other guys in that draft class, had some meetings with, I guess, the brass, or whatever you want to call it, the higher ends of minor league hierarchy. And they basically flat out told us, look, you guys have a chance. And, we just wanted to be upfront and honest and say that, we thought y'all had a good opportunity to pitch in the big leagues. And we just wanted y'all to know that and work hard, and we'll see where it goes. So I appreciated them being upfront and honest about that. That's one of the things about minor league baseball that I feel like sometimes is kind of lacking, is the communication side of things, is, where do I stand? And sometimes they really don't know. There's a lot of guys, sometimes, a hole opens up that they didn't think was going to open up. But at least, if they're up front with you and give you the most current information they have, it kind of is a calming effect on you. And, you can just kind of go about your business and work on the things that you need to do to get better without worrying too much about the optics.
Yeah, I guess on the flip side of that, did you feel like you had to work harder to not get lost in the shuffle from a pitching standpoint in that organization? Because when I think back to that organization and covering the New Hampshire days, for example, I think of like Zach Stewart and Kyle Drabeck and Deck McGuire and those guys who they had a lot invested in. Did you almost feel like you had to work harder to kind of keep your name at that kind of level?
I would say so. There was a lot of guys that came through there with a lot of notoriety. There's a lot of guys that came through there that, let's be honest, it's a business that, as well as I do, that, somebody that has a lot of money invested in them gets a little bit longer leash than somebody that doesn't. And as a college team, I'd have a whole lot of money invested in me. And I was not really a, wow, look at this guy's stuff guy, which, Stewart and Drabeck and Luis Perez and all those guys.
Yeah.
Guys would drool over them, and rightfully so. I caught their flat grounds. It was ridiculous. But, there's more than one way to get people out. And I just basically had to put my head down and keep getting people out.
Yeah. So you're sailing through that system first 3 years, start 2011 in AAA, and then it kind of all falls apart with the Tommy John and all that stuff. I guess how much kind of in retrospect do you think that kind of derailed things for you going forward?
I'm not going to lie to you, man. It sucked. I don't know the exact number, but I think Toronto went through something like 23 starting pitchers in the big leagues that year. It was pretty much the worst possible timing. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know for sure I would have pitched in the big leagues that year, because I don't. But I think I definitely had an opportunity had I stayed healthy. But, what are you going to do? It's tough, and injury's a part of it. So it was unfortunate timing, but it happened, and it's all part of the story. So I wouldn't go back and change the story. I think my baseball career was a very interesting one, and I would have loved to have pitched in the big leagues, and I think that would have probably been my best shot that year had I stayed healthy. But there's plenty of guys out there that, had they stayed healthy, would have been in the same situation.
Sure. Was that a nagging thing that was bugging you? Just finally went? Was it just one pitch and you felt something, or what was? I know it's a crappy thing to ask about, but what was that time like when you knew you were in trouble?
Yeah. So that all, I believe. I mean, and without going back and doing MRIs retroactively, you really don't know. But I kind of alluded to a little elbow deal in college.
Yeah.
I kind of think that was the start of it. At that point, there were a couple minor instances where I was shut down for just a small period of time. But even during the surgery, Dr. Andrews, who did the surgery, mentioned to me afterwards that it looked like there was a couple places on the UCL where it had maybe had a minor sprain before. And basically, my UCL never actually tore completely. It just, the way he explained it was an old, worn-out rubber band.
Yeah.
It just, I guess there was just so many little minor sprains over the years that it finally just couldn't hold anymore, and it kind of pulled away from the bone in the back is what caused it, and it wasn't serving its purpose anymore. But so yeah, I guess probably it was something that had kind of been coming over the years, but I don't know. That's one thing I always kind of prided myself on, was I always took the ball, sort of regardless. I always wanted to be the guy that walked back in that locker room that people could trust. So I never was really a pitch count guy and all that kind of stuff. Maybe looking back on it, I should have been, but like I said, I wouldn't change it.
Yeah, for sure. I can see statistically when you came back in 2012, but when did you feel like you kind of got back to normal, got back to 100% or as close to 100% as you could have?
It wasn't until right at the end of 2012. I think I made 3 starts when I came back in high A, which were fairly unremarkable. I want to say maybe 1 bad one, 2 okay ones. Went to Double A, did not have good stuff, didn't pitch well there. Actually had a start, the last start I believe it was against Portland. I thought I tore it again. Came out in, I want to say maybe the 2nd or 3rd inning or something like that. Our pitching coordinator was there, and he actually told me after the game, or once we got it checked out, and it ended up just being a flexor strain and a little bit of a shoulder deal. He said, man, when you threw that pitch, I definitely thought you tore it again. So thankfully I didn't, but I ended up going back down to Florida, rehabbing some more, and then I came back in the bullpen with Dunedin towards the end of that year, and that was the first time that I really had my stuff from the mound. Now, going through the rehab and everything, on flight ground and everything, I always felt like my arm was going to come back stronger. But for whatever reason, it never really translated to the mound until probably, I don't know, what would the end of that season have been? 16 months, something like that.
Yeah. Obviously, it's a big physical hurdle to come back from that, but you mentioned you thought you had torn it again. Is it a big mental hurdle as well, kind of thinking that, this could happen again at that time?
I think the mental thing is probably 75% of coming back from it. First of all, you guys have told the story before, but you're not with the team. You're back in Florida, basically you're just working out. You're everything that, you normally work out to do, you can't do. You just work out, and then you get to go play catch for, 10 minutes at 60 feet one day, and then 4 days later you get to play catch for 15 minutes at 70 feet. It's just a long grind. Thankfully, me and Robert Ray actually became really good friends over that. And we went fishing a lot, kind of get our minds off it. He was coming back off of a shoulder deal. We actually played a lot of left-handed tennis, which is kind of interesting. We still talk about that to this day. But it's a mental grind. It wears on you. You're used to being out there competing and being with your teammates, and you don't really have a team. It's you trying to battle your body.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how difficult that is. Most people listening to this, I'm sure, would have no idea. kind of transitioning back to that reliever role again too, after all that happened, I guess, was that like an arm management thing? Was that something they wanted you to do? Was that something you wanted to do? I guess, how did that all kind of end up happening? You ended up kind of basically transitioning to the AA bullpen.
Yeah, I think that's basically, it started, it was getting towards the end of that season once I had completed that rehab down in Florida after the start in AA. And basically they were like, hey, we don't have enough time to build you back up, and there's really not many innings available for starters. If you want to pitch this year, are you open to going, coming back to the bullpen? And I just want to get back out there and test this thing out. And my arm had been feeling great, body had been feeling great. So started that way and went back into the high A bullpen as kind of a rehab project at that point in time. Finished the year there. We were in the playoffs, if memory serves correct. So I got a couple more outings, and then it went well. Came back the next year and just kind of slid back into the bullpen role. And I'd always enjoyed it. I enjoyed it in college. There's aspects of starting that I enjoyed more. There's aspects of relieving that I enjoyed more. But most importantly, I just wanted the ball and be able to get out there and compete, and that was kind of the way to do it.
Yeah. How rewarding, I guess, was that All-Star game experience in 2014 to kind of get to do that in a different bit of a role?
It was really awesome. It was kind of a weird deal, and I'll be completely honest with you, going into it when they called me in and told me I was going to make the All-Star team, the first thing that went through my mind was, oh, man, I'd kind of rather have the break.
Yep.
Which is a terrible reaction, but it was what happened. It was the truth. But I think once I got home that night and really sat down and thought about, coming back from Tommy John, I've been in the Atlantic League at that point for, 5 years? Yeah. I'm basically on first-name friend basis with Tony Franklin and Trenton. And him being the manager was kind of cool. We had some good battles with Trenton over the years, and I think we'd come to mutually respect each other. And, it was a pretty rewarding deal. It was kind of weird, too, because our side of the league that year, it was a pretty old all-star team. It was a lot of kind of minor league veteran guys that I think once I got there and kind of got around those guys, too, it was a little bit more rewarding. Just kind of like, hey, man, we're still here. We're still doing this at a high level.
Yeah, Tony Franklin, a outstanding human being, by the way. I don't know how much you got to talk to him or get to know him, but one of the nicest people I've ever gotten to be around in 18 years of doing this.
And he sure seemed like it. I'd be running on the warning track out there, and he'd be getting his walk in, or we'd have a little 2 words conversation coming on and off the field when I was pitching or something like that. But I really enjoyed playing for him in the All-Star game. It was good to finally get to talk to him and Phelpsy over there, guys that I'd seen in the other dugout for years. Finally kind of got to know him a little bit.
Yeah, Tommy Phelps, another great guy. Geez, you're bringing up all these names, man. Brings back some memories for sure. But I had asked you before kind of the whole surgery thing went down, if you thought like you were being considered to be a guy with a future in that system. I guess, was there a point maybe where you thought that maybe they weren't treating you that way, or maybe you weren't being considered that way anymore?
Yeah, I guess it would have been the year after I came back in the bullpen with high A. Started the next year in Double A, and had a hiccup there with a lower back hip deal, and coming back off of that, I rehabbed it hard and was expecting to come back, kind of slide right back in and get back to work, and wasn't the case. I kind of was on the good old Phantom DL for a couple weeks, and then a spot opened up. I came back, pitched well, and then I kind of ended up back on it, and I was like, all right, well, what do you do now? At that point, I didn't really know anything about independent ball, so the thing was, well, you just do what you can to stay in affiliated ball, and hopefully a spot opens back up, and you get an opportunity to show yourself. And I had a pretty decent year that year. I tell people is, some people, the door opens for them. Somebody opens the door for them, and they get to walk through. Some people open the door on their own, and some people got to knock the door down. And I think that was a year that, I was kind of nudged it. I was at the door. I knocked a couple times, but I don't think I really did anything crazy. The next year was when I felt like I really threw the ball well enough And I did get a promotion to Buffalo, and had a couple outings and threw the ball well there. And when I threw the ball well there, and once again, I've been kind of doing the phantom thing, even though I was closing for the AA team, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Once I threw the ball well there and still ended up getting sent back down, it was kind of like, all right, well, I don't think the future's here. Which, I mean, it's no slight to the Blue Jays. It's business, but I think it was kind of easy to see at that point that I was no longer in the plans.
Yeah, and I want to preface this with any time that I ever talked to you in Somerset, you always had a great attitude about being in indie ball, and you were a guy who would always take the ball and do anything to help the team win. With that said, I'm surprised you ever got there in the first place with the numbers that you had. I guess, did you kind of have a similar feeling that there was almost disbelief that another organization wasn't going to give you an opportunity?
I had a conversation with our pitching coach in AA at the end of that season, where I was, like I said, where I was closing and had this small promotion to Buffalo,
yeah,
and all that. And basically, it's our exit interview type thing, and they're pretty much asking me to be open to coming back, just kind of for their own, whatever knowledge or whatnot. And I was like, man, I'm never going to say never. I was like, but at this point, I think you would agree that it's probably best that I go elsewhere. And he goes, yeah, you won't have any problem finding somewhere to play.
Huh.
And that was kind of my attitude. Figured I'd get an opportunity elsewhere. I knew age was kind of not in my favor. Neither was, injury history, I guess, so to speak. And I guess probably the time that I was on the DL that I wasn't really hurt didn't help either. But what are you going to do? I mean, it's kind of a weird deal, but that's how the story goes. So I had a pretty decent winter ball. Waiting for the phone to ring, just never rang. Well, it did ring. It was John Hunting.
Yeah, I guess what is that like? I guess is indie ball on your radar at the time when he reaches out? I guess what is that kind of process like when he's dropping the Somerset Patriots on you?
At that point, it was still kind of early in the summer or early in the winter. I was throwing well. He kind of reached out just saying, hey, I don't think it's going to come to this. Just being completely honest, I didn't think it was either.
Yeah.
But would you be open to Somerset? So I called around, just kind of did my homework, talked to a couple of guys who played there, said, man, if you end up going to indie ball, that's the spot to go. I was like, all right, well, I kind of filed it away, kept in touch with John. And then, as the winter went on and just really didn't look like I was going to end up anywhere, kind of talked to my agent, and he said, man, I think it's best we pull the trigger there. That way, you know for sure you have somewhere to go and you get an opportunity to pitch. And got in touch with John and ended up in Somerset. And, man, like I said, I knew nothing about it going in. And definitely changed my outlook on baseball at that point. Became about winning and about fun and, helping contribute to the team more so than kind of more of a singular focus of, just trying to advance yourself, which is something I had really missed. And it was one of the best experiences I had playing ball. It was awesome. I just, unfortunately, it's kind of got a stigma, I guess, that's kind of hard to overcome. But, man, it really was an awesome experience. I can't say enough good things about the people there and the ownership and the way they did their business.
Yeah. I remember talking to you right before you went to Taiwan that year. And the quote you gave me was, unfortunately, fun and winning doesn't pay the bills. Which is the truth. I guess, what was that experience like? And I guess how much of that decision was essentially a financial one to try to, get some more money towards the end of your career?
It was basically, I guess you can say 99% financially driven. I really didn't want to go. It's kind of weird how it came down. And I think this is either a known story or if it's not, it's going to be known. I think they had been in touch with Mickey Story. And he wasn't really looking to do that, really, at that time. I want to say his wife was maybe 2. But anyway, he was, I guess, kind of their first choice, so to speak. And he ended up not taking it and sort of fell in my lap. And at first, I was like, man, I like it here. We're winning. I'm throwing well. I think we got a really good chance to try and win a championship, which would be awesome. But kind of I don't want to say it was 100% financially driven, because it wasn't. That was probably an overstatement there, but it kind of came down to why not. It's a pretty awesome experience to get to go play in a different country, see a different part of the world. I don't think I would have ever been there otherwise. And my wife at the time was able to come with me, so it was another kind of bonus to it. And not my wife at the time; she's still my wife. My wife at that time was able to come with me. She was still trying. She had an opportunity with her work to be able to leave. So, but it was weird. It was kind of a strange deal over there. They play the game a little differently. I told a guy we were talking about the other day. A buddy of mine's a scout for the Rays, and it's almost like a Latin approach. Not a whole lot of plate discipline. They swing a lot. They make a lot of contact without the power. They just don't really have the athletes to play defense. So you see inflated hitting numbers, just not really so much on the power side. But I ended up getting basically typhooned out over there. I made 3 appearances in minor league games. Never really got activated to the big league squad. Had 1 average start, 1 really good start, and 1 terrible start. So it was kind of a mixed bag. But I enjoyed the experience. The people were great. Country was awesome. And like I said, the finances definitely helped. Basically, the finances allowed me to keep playing for a couple more years, is what happened. So it's one of those deals.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys, I think you went there in July, if I'm not mistaken, and I think a lot of guys kind of sign. Yeah, so a lot of guys kind of sign in indie ball, and they'll say, I'll kind of stay here for, this amount of months, and if something doesn't happen for me, I'll try to go somewhere else. Was that kind of your mentality too at that time?
Not necessarily. I was kind of there trying to get back into, my outlook was I want to pitch well and I want to get back into affiliated ball. I think a lot of guys, I guess maybe are kind of looking for more so that phone call from Mexico or Taiwan or something, or something like that, looking for kind of the payday. I don't think I was really looking for that in that manner. I was just trying to put up as good a numbers as I can, but I think once I got there, I just kind of immersed myself in the team and the culture there, and it was just like I just wanted to show up and help the team win, and we did a lot of winning.
Yes, that you guys did. Was it tough to see what that team ended up doing from afar? Yeah, I kind of, I got back home and was able to listen. Well, I guess I listened to them. I don't think there was a video feed, but I definitely followed the championship series. But yeah, it was a little tough. I felt like they reached out, and when I congratulated them, and we had good conversations about, hey, yeah, you were a part of this and all that good stuff. Which I definitely felt like I contributed to that. But it was tough not being there because you go out there and lay it online with those guys over the course of the season, and then not being able to be there at the end was kind of a tough pill to swallow. Yeah. Dominican Winter League after that, you and I have talked about this before and kind of that play. I don't know how much you want to get into that, but did you think that was it for you after that all went down?
Yes. Yes, I did. That play and that experience is basically the only reason that I went back to Somerset, because I've followed the line that I guess sold my wife on me going back and her being okay with it was I can't leave and that be the last time that I was on the mound. So for informative purposes, we had a little swing and bunt. I caught it, went to flip it to the first baseman. The first baseman had tried to field the bunt as well, so nobody was at first. So I took 2 steps and dove. And as I'm diving, I'm trying to reach out, and I guess I just kind of lost track of where I was in the air and essentially do a scorpion right on my face. And didn't really, was kind of out of it, didn't really think of it at the time, but ended up with a pretty severe concussion and some disc stuff in my neck. Hung out for a week, rehabbed it, tried to pitch again. About a week later, wasn't right, anywhere near right. Was not a good outing. Obviously, I came out of the bullpen just trying to get an inning in, and ended up, they're you're sorry, but we got to release you and send you home so you can get healthy. And kind of stepped away for the game, and but still stayed in touch with John, and an opportunity came back right after, I think it was right after All-Star break or sometime in mid-season, and he just kind of reached out, and I said, no, I've been throwing, and ended up going back up there. Didn't really have the success that I had some good outings, had some not so good outings. Ended up transitioning back to the bullpen, where I think I was definitely a little bit more of a help to the team than I had been as a starter for sure. But we had a good little run. Unfortunately, ran up against a pretty hot squad again in the playoffs, and that's how baseball goes. But pitched well enough to get an opportunity to go down to Venezuela again and play in Margarita, and threw well down there, and had a good end of the career.
Yeah, I do want to ask you a little bit about 16 in Somerset. Because there's a game that comes to mind for me. I want to kind of see, and you and I haven't talked about this before. Is there a game that kind of comes to mind for you in 16, one that really stands out for you at all?
So 16 would be the first year? 16
was your second year.
Or the second year. The game that would stand out would be, for me, was it York or Sugarland at home, where it was like an extra inning game?
It was York. You were supposed to pitch one inning, and you ended up pitching like 6.
Yeah. That was, and that's by far the best stuff that I have I wish I could tell you what I did different mechanically or whatever, but I was supposed to throw one inning. You're right. I threw first of all, I hadn't thrown a curveball in probably 2-3 years. I've basically been sinker slider, but threw a couple in the bullpen. It felt really good. I snapped one off in warm-ups pregame, or not pregame, but before the inning started. I mean, that felt pretty good. And threw a couple sinkers that kind of had some life to them. I was like, all right, maybe this thing's getting back on track. And I remember coming to Brett after the first inning, and he's like, man, how you feel? I was like, I feel great. He goes, yeah. You good to go? I was like, yeah, let's go. And sure enough, however many, would you say 6?
Yeah, 6 innings.
And how do we win that game? We won like a walk-off.
So it was 15th inning. Michael Click was facing Aaron Eggleston. It was a 1-2 count. He thought he struck him out. He showed up the umpire. Eggy hit a walk-off single, and then half the York team went after the umpires.
And then everybody exploded. I do remember that. I remember. We won one game on a walk-off bunt or something one time. I was getting those confused. But yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I do remember that.
Yeah, it's a hard one to forget. You went to Venezuela after, like you said. When you're down there, do you know at that time that that's it for you? Or are you thinking about 17 at all? Or do you know at the time, like, this is how it's going to end?
I wasn't 100% sure. I was throwing well. I was kind of keeping in touch with some people. Knew I probably wasn't going to get a shot to get back into affiliate ball at that point in time. I was kind of gauging options of, maybe Mexico or something along those lines, and even, possibly going back to Somerset. But the way it played out, I threw well down there. The last game I pitched was Game 6 of I believe it was the opening series of the playoffs, at Barquisimeto Nieto against Lara. And I went 6 innings, had a good outing, and I was in front of 30,000 people. And I just remember kind of walking off after the 6th, because I was pretty sure I was done after the 6th. I think it was like 105 pitches, something like that. And, I kind of see the manager getting ready to do the old handshake. And I just kind of remember walking a little slower to the dugout, kind of taking it all in. I wasn't 100% sure, but it was pretty close to that point in time that I'd made up my mind that, it's probably time to move on. The travel at that point, just kind of trying to eke out a living, doing it was kind of starting to wear. And, I had a small daughter at the time as well. So It was tough being away.
I think kind of the last thing I would have for you is just kind of in doing the research for this and kind of looking at your career as a whole. I look at it and go, you know what? Damn it, this guy had a really good career. People kind of get caught up on big league stuff, and that's on them. Are you able to reflect on your career and go, you know what? Damn, that was fun. That was pretty good. That all worked out pretty well.
It's kind of, you kind of get caught up in right when that's kind of one of those things I said when it was good to get away and kind of recharge the batteries a little bit. It's easy to get caught up in the disappointment of not, realizing the ultimate goal at the end. But I think the more you're removed from it, you're able to look back and reflect. And yeah, I have recently, kind of reconnected with some old friends, that I made in the game, and some of the best friends I have in the game are from the game as well. And it's kind of reliving old times, and like you said, kind of venture back every once in a while. Everybody's competitive. They're like, oh, how'd I do in this year? And start reading the stats and stuff. And it's rewarding to have played for as long as I did, and kind of, I guess, overcome some of the obstacles and hurdles. But if somebody tells 8-year-old Randy Boone from Hope, Texas, that I was able to do everything I was in my baseball career, I think you'd have probably taken it. And like I said, at this point, I'm pretty pleased with the career as well. Obviously, I would have loved to play in the big leagues and made a ton of money, but the main thing for me was just being able to go out there and compete and enjoying what I do. And it was getting to the point where the end, it was harder to get out there and go, with the injuries and stuff over the years. It took a lot more to be able to get out there and compete, and it's kind of a grind doing that over and over again.
Randy, man, this was fun as hell, I gotta say. You were always a guy I really enjoyed talking to over the 2 years there. Not even so much the interviews, but it's kind of getting to pick your brain after the interviews were done in the hallway like we used to do, man. So to get to catch up with you was a real treat, and I really, really, really appreciate you taking the time for me today, man.
No, my pleasure, man. Miss you guys, and like I said, miss being around the game and all the people in it, and I enjoyed our time there, and as well dating back to Trenton, even though we really didn't know each other back then. But it was always a pleasure, and this was no different.
All right, thank you, my friend. All right, guys, thank you so much for checking out our chat with Randy Boone. That was a real fun one. I'm sure it delivered on the promise of being a real entertaining chat there. So can't wait to do some more of these. We're gonna have Scott Kelly next. He's gonna be episode 12. That's one that you guys have been asking me for and asking me for and asking me for, and guess what? Damn it, we did it. You asked for Scott Kelly, we got you Scott Kelly. So that one's coming up. Thank you guys again for checking this one out and checking out the first 11 episodes. 11, we made it. It goes to 11. We did it. We made it to 11. We're gonna get to 12 real soon. Can't wait for that. And can't wait for you guys to stay safe, stay inside, and wash your damn hands. My name is Mike Ashmore. This was the Untitled Mike Ashmore podcast, because all the good names were taken, and I'll see you guys soon.